Hi everyone, thanks for joining in tonight. I'm excited to have Fleur McDonald joining me today. Fleur has lived and worked on farms for much of her life after growing up in the small town of, I hope I say this right, is it Ororo?
Ororo, yep,
Yep.
close enough.
In South Australia. She became a Gillaroop before spending 20 years farming 8,000 acres east of Esperance, WA. Fleur likes to write about strong women overcoming adversity, drawing inspiration from her own experiences in rural Australia. She is the best-selling author of Red Dust, Blue Skies, Purple Roads, Silver Clouds, Crimson Dawn, Emerald Springs, Indigo Storm, Sapphire Falls, The Missing Pieces of Us, Suddenly One Summer, Fool's Gold, Where the Rivers Run, Without a Doubt, Starting From Now, Red Dirt Country, The Shearer's Wife, Something to Hide, and Deception Creek, as well as the ebook exclusives of You Were Here and A Farmer's Choice. Fleur currently lives in Esperance with her two children, an energetic Kelpie and a Jack Russell Terrier. And her latest book is Rising Dust. Hopefully you can see my copy there. Oh, it's going to disappear a little bit. Um, and just want to mention to people watching that thanks to Ellen and Unwin, if you've got a question for Fleur, please type it in comments and I can read it out and you'll have a chance to win a copy of Rising Dust. So thanks again, Fleur, for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jackie. This is going to be good fun. Good night. I hope everyone's got a wine or a cup of tea.
Yeah, I hope so too. And just wondering if you want to start off by telling us a bit about Rising Dust.
Yeah, well, Rising Dust is in the fifth in the series of the Young Dave Burrows series, and he's been through a bit of a tragedy in the previous books, so we're just sort of following on from that. You know, he's estranged from his wife Mel, and her father isn't keen to let Dave anywhere near him. Or him or his kids and his ex-wife, so he's dealing with that. Bob, his partner, is thinking it's a good idea to try and get him out of town for a little while, getting focused on something else. And he's really happy when a report of some sheep being stolen up north of Carnarvon comes in. So he grabs hold of Dave pretty quickly, and they shoot up there. And then they get into a little bit. They stay on a station stay. Which is like a caravan park on a station for those who don't know. And they get reined in, and then suddenly all hell breaks loose.
And I just wanted to mention, because a lot of people do ask this, I read Rising Dusk without reading your other books and found that I still was able to understand the characters and get, like, I don't think, I mean, I was probably missing a little bit of background in that, but found it fine as a standalone. So I know a lot of people ask that, do they have to read all the others before they read this one? But I don't think it's absolutely necessary.
No, I don't think so. I do get a lot of questions about, you know, obviously Dave was married to Melinda in the early
Mm,
Dave Burrows series,
mm,
and in the contemporary rural fiction, which comes out in November, so in the present day, Dave's married to a girl called Kim. And so sometimes I get a bit of some questions around that. It's no spoiler to say that Dave and Melinda go their separate ways. You know, that he's
mm,
obviously with Kim now. So what it is,
mm.
it's just the two different time frames. Early Dave is married / divorced, and in the contemporary present day Dave, he's married to Kim and
Yeah,
particularly happy.
yeah, yeah. And I've got a sorry, Wendy. We've got quite a few people watching at the moment, which is great. Wendy says she's read 6 of your earlier books. She hasn't read any for a while, so she must make sure she remedies that, as she's really enjoyed the ones she's already read. Kelly wonders if writing or working the land is easier. That's an interesting question.
And I don't think in all of the years that I've been doing this, I don't think I've ever been asked that question. I don't know. They've both got their challenges, and they've both got and they're both great fun to do. I think, challenges, you would think that there's no challenges physically sitting and writing, but since that's my full-time job these days, I certainly find that physically, unless I'm exercising every day, my body goes to crap. I've had spinal surgery, so I just hurt all over if I stay sitting, and everything tightens up and that. And physically on the farm, we're always moving. Sometimes things are hard, but chasing sheep, all the rest of it. I'll tell you one thing, I never, ever, ever battled with my weight the way that I do now when I was working on the farm. So, and I guess you've got the creative side for the writing, but farming's creative too. So, I think they're probably both on a par with one another, just in different ways.
And you've certainly written a lot of books. Is being an author something that you had always thought you wanted to do?
No, look, I think I fell into writing. I had always been a reader, as I guess most of us writers have been. And my son was diagnosed with autism when he was quite young, and I was trying to help him with his attention span. So I wrote some kids' books and hopefully tried to help him with that. And at the same time I was doing that, I'd read Rachel Treasure's Jillaroo, the iconic Jillaroo novel, and I had been doing a writing course that my parents had given me soon after I'd left school. And I just started, I had this idea in the middle of the night one time about some stock theft. I just had itchy fingers and I had to write it down. So once I had done that, I sent it to my tutor, and that's when he said that I might have had a bit of talent for storytelling. So I think it's very easy to say that I fell into it. I'm very grateful that it happened. But yes, I don't know that it was what I actually set out to do. When I was a kid, we're reading Enid Blyton books and, books like that, the Hardy Boys, and those authors were dead. And, not a great career choice.
And how hard or easy was it to get that first book published?
Look, my story is very unusual, and it was reasonably easy. They talk about being an overnight success taking 10 years. I was just incredibly lucky and blessed to be in the right place at the right time. When I decided to submit, it was probably about, I didn't have a finished manuscript, and it was probably about, 6 to 8 weeks from when I submitted to when I finally had a contract for 2 books. So it was pretty crazy. And I wouldn't encourage anybody to put a manuscript in or to submit to a publisher without a completed manuscript. These days, I was completely just in the right place at the right time with a person who believed in my story.
Yeah. And was that your first story you'd written, or?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a pretty good run then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Sarah wonders, on average, how long does it take you to write a book?
Look, I'm on pretty much a 6-monthly cycle because I write 2 books a year. So, my deadline's on the 1st of March and the 1st of September. So I've got to work within those time frames. So pretty much a 6-month turnaround. That's from when I finished, writing the book and then sort of editing it.
Yeah.
My edits are always very, very big because I'm writing so quickly. There's always a few gaps or, not enough character development, or the narrative arc's maybe not quite right. So, big edits. But it's easier to work with something that you've already got down on the page than, trying to throw those words down and create the story. So I love the editing. I'm very different to a lot of other writers. I love the editing because the hard work is writing the story.
Yeah. And so both the books you write, they're both series, is that right?
No, not not really. The contemporary rural novels have always got a strong female character in them. Dave is there in the background, but he's either saving them or not saving them, but helping them solve a problem or a mystery or something like that. Whereas these early Dave books are wholly and solely focused on Dave and his life and his what happens to him in these books is his trajectory to who he is now.
Okay, yeah. And what was your first idea for Dave?
Oh, look, that's it. I didn't know that Dave was going to sort of turn up the way that he has. I was writing Red Dust, which came out 13 years ago, and I needed a detective. So I just created this Dave, and I had been talking to the fellow who was heading up the stock squad in WA at the time, and funnily enough, his name was Dave. And so Dave, the name Dave was as a thank you to the guy that was heading up the stock squad, just to say thanks, I suppose, for his help. And then if I'd known what was going to happen with, the character Dave, I would have actually made his name completely different. But so that's, he just turned up as a pretty fully formed character, really. And I wrote him into that book. And then I think it was in Purple Roads. Again, I suddenly needed a detective, and I thought, well, I've already got one. So I popped him in just for a couple of lines. But it was really in Emerald Springs that he sort of came into his own, and whether that was laziness on my behalf or what, I'm not quite sure, Jackie. I went to write this book. Amelia had been carjacked right in the first few pages, suddenly realised I needed a detective, and I thought, oh, well, I've got one, so let's use him again. So here we are.
And he's never looked back again. Kelly says she loves your book since she first read Fool's Gold. So many great characters. She wonders if you have a favourite character.
Oh, I'm in love with Dave. He's my character. Look, I think that's like trying to choose your favourite child a little bit too. I really loved writing, and I cannot for the life of me remember her name, the main character in Sapphire Falls. I really loved writing her. And I liked writing Brianna, who was in Suddenly One Summer. So, but Dave, I guess I write Dave all the time, one way or the other. And so he's the one that I'm spending the most time with.
And Wendy says she thinks you depict the feeling of station life very well. Obviously, you build on that. Is that something you think is important, or is it separate as well as the actual story? And Wendy also mentions that she grew up.
Different.
Yeah, she grew up in a large station herself, Wendy said.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I certainly spent a lot of time in station country when I was a kid. My nana and papa lived on a station sort of north of Adelaide, and my uncle and auntie had a station out of Alice Springs, and mum and dad did as well, but I never lived on those stations, but I spent enough time there. And then, of course, I left school and went and worked on farms. So that sort of life is very known to me, and I'm really comfortable with it. And I think that's why setting it in those places I think that's why I do that. It's known, I understand it. It's easy to write about the rain coming in over the ranges, or the colours of the roads, or things like that. So I think that's why I like setting it there. But with Rising Dust, the difference with that one is I hadn't been north of Carnarvon before, and I took myself on a little holiday. I bought myself a camper trailer and went off on a little holiday for a month up north by myself, and camped out, and just went through all that area and immersed myself in that setting, so I could use a different setting, and I really, really loved that.
And Melissa wonders what inspires you for each new book.
The fact I have a contract that I have to meet. No, really. I think I guess getting the ideas, I always try and stay really fresh and new. I don't want people to think that they've read a book and previously in the new one. So always try and be really fresh and new. So I'm forever listening to the radio. I'm an ABC night, because I don't sleep very well. I'm an ABC late night radio tragic. And you would not believe some of the stories that you hear people ringing up. And if something grabs your attention, all you need to do is say, what if that happened? What if that happened? And then try and marry it all together, and you end up with a story. I always read papers, and I'm searching for little funny antidotes there. And of course, the guy that helped me originally, who was the head of the stock squad, I'm still great mates with, and he and I often have a talk. I had a plot point this morning in book 20 that I've just put in today, that we finished editing today. I had a plot point today that wasn't working, and I rang up Dave and I just said, this is, because he reads everything. I said, this is what I've done. I've had to pull these threads because that was what the editor wanted. Now I'm in the last chapter and this isn't working. What am I doing? And we just talked back and forth. And by the time we'd had a 5-minute conversation, I had what I needed, and off I went. So he's a great resource and help to me.
No, sounds good. What about what you like to read yourself?
I'm crime girl through and through.
Yeah.
And that goes for TV shows, anything. I'm not crime. This might sound slightly funny, but crime is a really safe space for me. I don't like these romantic comedies or love stories or anything where I might have to feel something. I don't like that, so I stay where it's safe.
And is there something you might have been reading lately that you'd want to recommend to us?
Well, I'm just about to start reading The Silent Listener. I haven't started it yet, but I'm just about to. So I've read some really great reviews on that, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's a good one. That one I interviewed, is it Lynn, a while ago? Yeah. And when you're planning your day, do you set aside a certain amount of time for writing every day, or just see how you feel? What do you normally do?
Well, because I write 2 books a year, I don't really have time to write to wait for the muse to strike. Although in saying that, my friends would say to me that if I said to you, yes, I write every day, that I was lying. So I always have these great intentions every time I start a book, that I'm going to write every day, and I'm going to this is my word count. So I sit down and I work out how many words I have to put down per day to reach my deadline. And sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. More often than not, it doesn't. And then I end up with like a great big block of words measured just before the deadline. So one way or another, though, I do write every day. It's really, really important to write every day, I think. Otherwise, you lose the grain of the story and you can't remember what you wrote, 3 weeks ago type thing. So it's really important to stay immersed in amongst the pages. So yeah, I do that, but it's pretty, it can be pretty difficult to actually stick to those times that I want to spend writing.
And have you found the more you write, the easier it gets?
If you write every day and you stay in amongst the pages of the stories, yes, that is much easier. And creating a whole new storyline and a whole new book, the amount of days that I procrastinate against starting that new file, because you stare at that white page and go, oh, I'm going to fill this with like 90 or 100,000 words, and I don't even know where to start. And there is nothing more frightening than staring at a blank page. And I do find that hard. That's what I was saying before. I love the editing, because for me, the hard work is actually putting the original story down.
Yeah. And Sarah wonders if you have any rules that you stick to when you're writing.
Yeah, none.
No rules?
Oh, well, actually, that's probably not quite. I've got a really, really quirky thing that I do. And I realised that after the 4th book, every main character in my book has got an A, like as in a girl.
Really?
Has got an A on the end of their name. I had no idea that I had done that for the first 4 books, and then I looked back and I went, oh, so I've just kept doing it.
And I'm wondering if you could tell us what being a successful writer means to you.
I'm just incredibly grateful. And I have struggled with that word successful because you're really only as good as what your last book was. And I think we're going into some reasonably uncharted waters in the book industry in the next few years. So I'm incredibly grateful that I was at the right place at the right time, especially when it came to when I got divorced 8 years ago. I didn't think that I had any skills. And looking back now, yeah, I probably did. You know, I could have, there are probably lots of things I could have done, but at that time, I didn't think that I had anything, but I knew that I could write a book. And so, you know, since then, I've supported myself, my kids. You know, I've bought a house, I've bought a farm, all on what I've done through just putting words on the page and being very lucky that I have very loyal readers. And I couldn't. Yeah, so there's no other word other than just being so grateful.
And just want to remind people again that thanks to Ellen and Unwin, if you want to type a question to Fleur, I can read it out and you'll have a chance to win a copy of her book. Kelly wonders how COVID lockdowns have impacted on your writing. I'm not sure if in Esperance you might have had a bit of different experience than maybe some of us had in other places.
Oh yeah, look, I think WA has been so lucky compared to some of you guys over east. So I guess the first year I was probably busier than what I'd ever been what was it, 2020 when it hit, wasn't it? Yeah, I was probably busier because I had started up a not-for-profit organisation called DV Assist, and we were just sort of getting that going and the counselling services going. And in amongst that, I was still writing 2 books a year. The same thing happened last year, like the 2 books a year. So I was still pretty busy with that. And I took that month to go up north on a holiday just as a research trip. But the real difference has been not being able to get out on the road and talk to people and, you know, see the readers. And I get a little bit cranky with, you know, seeing all this money that's being thrown at well, not all this money because there hasn't been enough, but, you know, the federal government, you know, putting money into the live music scene, which is great because they need it too, you know, but nobody has given any thoughts to the fact that the authors haven't been able to get on the road either. And I've actually written a couple of letters about that because I just think even though people can still buy our books online, they can still buy music online as well. So I don't know that we're actually any different to the live music area. But that's the difference. I really miss talking to people and hearing their stories and what they've liked about the books and that. So in November, cross fingers, we're going to do a big tour for Book 20, which I can't wait to do.
Yeah. Do you know what sort of places you might be visiting?
I think Laura, who is my publicist, is working on that at the moment. So I think South Australia and Queensland and maybe somewhere else. We'll hopefully have that bedded down reasonably soon.
Yeah. Well, I hope some people watching are able to come and see you.
Yeah, I hope people feel comfortable because, you know, that's the scary thing, isn't it? Getting out and about and perhaps not feeling comfortable in enclosed places.
Wendy wonders if you always know how your story's going to finish when you start writing it.
No, I don't. I really, really don't. And there's a reason for that because, one, my characters lead the story. I sort of let them take over and do what we need to do there. But I feel that if I know, I might accidentally signpost it as I'm writing, so I try not to know. Rising Dust is an absolute classic for that. I got 3/4 of the way through, and I thought, what I've half got in my mind for this, that's not going to work. It's too obvious. So what can I do to have this massive big twist in here? So again, I had another conversation with Dave, and we worked out a few things. Same with Deception Creek. In there, right at the end, I killed a person that probably didn't need to be killed and probably upset a lot of people. But again, that's that keeping things fresh and authentic and real, I suppose. And there's not always happy endings in books.
Yeah.
So I really like not to know what's going to happen. So I hope you guys keep turning the page.
No, that's really interesting. I haven't heard an author say it that way like you have. Yeah, it's an interesting idea. Could you tell us what you think makes a good story?
It's got to hold your attention.
Yeah.
And that is the main thing, isn't it? You've got to be drawn in. You've got to live amongst those pages. For me, so I read a book the other day by Tabitha Bird, The Emporium of Imagination.
Yes. Yeah.
And I did because it's an adult story, but I loved it, and I had to keep turning the page. And for me, that's really unusual. I'm a really harsh reader since, I don't have a huge amount of time. And so a book has really got to grab me. So whatever that formula that Tabitha had in amongst that book just totally grabbed me, and I couldn't stop reading and I laughed and I cried. And I did it out loud. I think that's a real key. If you're laughing out loud, or if you're having a bit of a snivel or something, it evokes so much emotion. The author has really, really done their job well. And I know that my mum used to say that she would sometimes be in the kitchen or out in the back room doing the book work, and she'd hear me giggling, and she'd come in and she'd check to see what I was doing. And I'd just be curled up in a chair reading a book. I wouldn't have even known she checked on me.
Yeah.
So I think that's it's holding you and making you dive into the story and live in amongst those characters.
Sharon wonders if you have much input into the covers of your books.
Yeah, I do. Look, I'm very lucky. I don't know that all authors do, but I get a choice. So the covers, the design will sort of come up. There'll be 2 or 3 different choices, or however many choices there are, and then my publisher Annette, she'll send me 2 or 3 backgrounds and perhaps 2 or 3 girls. I don't know how many they've had to weed out to get it down to that, but that's what I see. One thing I don't do is write any characteristics of the main character, the girl that's going to be on the front, until I've seen that girl and
really?
edit.
Okay.
Yeah, because it just, you never, what's in my head's never going to correlate to what's on the cover. So, so I'm very lucky with that. Not all authors get that option.
And have you found that that's only as you've become more successful and written more? Like at the start, did you have as much input?
No, not in the first 2 books. The third book, because the rural genre was just starting to get going and there were more people being published, some of the backgrounds were accidentally being used that had been on another book, and the background on Purple Roads had been used on Fiona Palmer books. So I stuck my hand up and I said, I don't think that that's right. And plus, it was, I can't even remember what it was. I think it was a homestead, but there was no road. It said Purple Roads on the title, and I couldn't understand why there wasn't a road on the cover. And I've learned as I've gone along, like for me, this is my business. This is how I make my money, and I feed my kids. And so I've always said I really would like to be involved. And yes, again, I've been very lucky. They've welcomed me with open arms. To a point that as where the author needs to get to, where they're involved enough and they feel like they're involved, and yet there's still a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes that I don't see or know about.
And Kim's got an interesting question from what you talked about before about support for authors. She's wondering what you would like to see happen to support authors.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I've thought about this a little bit. It's really hard for us to work out whether we've had a drop in income or anything, because we don't get paid weekly, just the same as the music industry. So I guess what I probably would have liked was to see just maybe firstly the recognition that, you know, we were in the same boat as what as a musician was in. And then perhaps in time, when we were able to travel or, you know, put on an event, perhaps there could have been just a small amount going to a launch of a book or something like that, to encourage people to come in. And look, I'm certainly not on the look for a handout or anything. That's not what this is about. It's more about the fact that it's a recognition thing, that we have been hit the same way as what the musicians has, and there's just been no talk of us. And I know we're an absolute minority, I realise that, but I usually tend to speak up for the minority.
Yeah. Sarah wonders if there's anything special you do to try and entice or capture new readers to your books.
Oh, that's forever on my radar. I'm always wanting to, you know, meet new people that might like to come across. I try to be fairly active on Facebook. You know, sometimes, you know, it's a little bit harder in the way that time-wise, because I do a few other things other than write books as well. I'm always trying to, you know, look at different ways, different marketing. But again, it's been pretty hard with COVID. There has been social media, there has been Zoom, there has been anything online, and you know, you can post off bookmarks and things, but other than that, it's been pretty difficult to try and get yourself out there. I think it's just a matter of you know, just hopefully word of mouth. You know, people like the books. Word of mouth is the most powerful thing.
Yeah, recommendations from other readers is
Yep, the most powerful thing, and also recommendations from you know, booksellers as well. You know, in the indie bookstores, or you know, where people really care about books. Couldn't get a better spot to try and get some more readers there.
And do you have a good local independent bookstore where you are?
Oh, very, very small town in Esperance. There is a bookshop here called the Book Box, but it is very tiny, and it only stocks a certain type of book. So it's pretty hard to get new releases and stuff where I am, unless you know, you're online or you go to Perth a little bit. But I'm 500 k's from a really good sized town and 700 k's from Perth, so sort of a little bit hamstrung.
CJ wonders why you chose to write rural books in the first place.
I didn't know anything else, you know, that was my life. I was living on a farm, I was living in a little Atco hut without a toilet and without electricity, and that was what I did. I worked on farms, and I knew that I could write about that really authentically. I've tried, The Missing Pieces of Us was a different style of book. That was more just like a general fiction book. Not my favourite book to write, and I didn't have trouble with it, but, you know, I was writing things about things that I didn't feel that I knew well. You know, I was writing about cities. I was writing about, I could have gone and lived in the city for a couple of weeks or so, but that would have driven me insane, and it wouldn't have done anything for my creativity. So, I'm better off outside writing, and I think that's why I'm comfortable writing what I write.
And Kelly's got a good question. She says that if you were to write with another author, who would you choose to write with? If you co-wrote a book together.
Can I write with Michael Connolly, please? That's who I would love to write with. He's like my favourite author, and I was just thinking about Candace Fox when you said that, and her writing with James Patterson, and I suddenly went, oh yeah, well of course that's who I need to write with. That would be Michael Connolly.
And Sharon wonders if you read your reviews of your books, and how important you think reviewers are.
Look, reviewers are really important for catching other readers' attention. I purposely don't read those reviews because if there's anything like that, someone wanted stabbing me in the chest, that would be a review that wasn't a good one. And I find that enough people tell me about them as it is, you know, like my friends will tell me, or, you know, someone will send something through there at some stage. So I tend not to, I try away from places like Goodreads. It's always the kindest place.
Yeah. And Sarah's got a good comment as well. Before we were talking about enticing new readers and that, she said that she herself has been introduced to so many authors that she'd never heard of before through this page, so that it's great that you're joining, and it's a great source of getting your books out to new readers by joining us here.
Absolutely. The other really great page is the ABC book. I told you I was an ABC project. The ABC book club page is a great place to find new books. And I only ever go on there just to find new authors to read. So
yeah, they've got a lot of members on their page as well. Belinda wonders, after so many books, where do you get your ideas for each new crime?
Well, going back to what I was saying before about listening to the radio at night. So if I tell you a little story about Rising Dust, there was a story online about a yacht that had, I think it was a yacht or some type of boat that had sort of washed up ashore on with nobody on it. And I thought, oh, wow, there's really got to be something that I can do with that. And that was when I sort of started asking those what-if questions. And anyone who reads Rising Dust will know that it opens with a beach scene and a boat. So that's sort of where that one came from. If you go back to Emerald Springs, when there was a carjacking, I was having this bizarre conversation with my dad, who was the treasurer for the Carrollton Rodeo. Don't know if anyone knows where Carrollton is, but it's in the mid-north of South Australia, at the bottom of the Flinders Ranges. And they have a massive rodeo there every year. And they've got, you know, tens of thousands of dollars going through the gate. And I said to Dad one day, what do you do with this money when the rodeo's finished and, you know, you've got however much money sitting in the boot of your car? What do you do with that? And it's seriously a two-church, one shop, one pub town. That's basically all there is. There's no bank, there's no anything. So Dad goes, oh, I'll just take it home and park the car in the garage.
Okay.
I said, what if you get carjacked? And he goes, oh, that's Fleur. Get that stupid look that my parents have been giving me ever since I was a little girl when I overstepped the mark and my imagination's gone a little funny. And he said, well, that's not going to happen. And I said, oh, well, maybe not, but I can make that happen. And I think it was the second chapter in Emerald Springs was where the carjacking happened.
And are you someone who has lots of ideas for lots of future books, or do you just think of it just before you're going to write your next book?
It's interesting. I used to have lots of ideas just percolating around, running around, and just the last two books I've suddenly found that I've gone, oh, what am I going to do with this? I actually don't have an idea. But that's where the newspapers come in. You know, read a story on the newspaper and something just piques your interest. Something will always come up. I'm never frightened that I won't find an idea.
Yeah. So would you say you've ever had writer's block?
Oh, yeah. My block that I live on is called writer's block for that exact reason. I tend to, but not, not so crippling that I couldn't start a book or that I didn't have an idea or anything like that. It's more like, crap, I've written myself into a corner. I don't know how to fix this. What am I going to do? Okay, I just need to sit down. I need to... So where's my piece of paper? So I don't know if anyone can see this, but this is this book 20 that I've been writing. And they were the links that I had of all these people that I needed to join together in the last quarter of the book. So if I actually start writing it out and seeing it physically, then I can usually get myself out of it.
Yeah. And what do you hope readers will love about your books?
Oh, look, I just hope that I hope they love the characters. I hope they love the storyline. One of the things I do try and do is bring something that's quite topical in the country into the books at the time. So it's not an education thing, but just to let people know that what I'm writing about is real. This book 20, I've been talking about fuel prices. I've been talking about the lack of AdBlue, which, affects farmers because of our tractors and our headers and everything that takes diesel. So I always try and write about something that's topical. So there is that realistic part of it there as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm always interested to know, like, an Australian rural writer, do you get many readers from overseas?
Yeah, well, my books are in Canada and the US and the UK. So, there's obviously an appetite for them. And some of them I do talk to them online a little bit. And sometimes when I put up a new blog post and you can see on Google Analytics, you often see, someone's over in America or someone's in England or wherever. So there are overseas readers.
And have you had anything strange or interesting that you've had come, like questions from readers overseas?
Oh, not so much. Oh, no, I thought you were going to ask something different then. No, they're all pretty good. Occasionally get a funny, I was looking through some Facebook memories the other day. There's always someone that makes some bizarre quote when you're on tour. And I remember I was at the Wage and Field Days. These two little old ladies came up, and it was not long after I got divorced, so I didn't have any rings on my hands. And she took my hands into hers and she's holding it, and she just said, "Oh, my dear, you're not married. You can write sex scenes."
How funny.
Yeah, so you always get some of those little funny comments from around the place.
And Melissa says that as you're living in a small town, she wonders if you ever get feedback from people in your town who feel that you've written about them.
Well, when I do, I think that I've done my job really well. I never write about anybody, and I'll tell you why. I had in Blue Skies, I was writing about a particular person, and there is a bit of a ponce. And the vet came out, we're preg testing cows, and he said to me, "Oh, Fleur, I've just read Blue Skies, this particular character in there, he reminds me just of blah." And I went, oh, that wasn't supposed to happen, because he was right. It was about somebody that lived out in our area on a farm. And so I've never done it since. And if I have, talk about a stock agent that's, the big hat or the sausage-like fingers. Well, that's any stock agent, They're outside, they're working, they're solid salt of the earth men. And if you talk about something like, Kim is based on my friend Heather, but she knows that. Yeah. And the only other one that I've done is A Crimson Dawn, Catherine Marriott, my friend Catherine Marriott, I based a character on her. So, it's not a good idea. I'm always petrified I'm going to get sued or someone's going to work out that I've spoken about them, and I don't want that. I just figure I've done a good job if someone thinks they've seen themselves in the characters.
Yeah. And Belinda wonders if any of your books have been optioned for movies or TV.
Oh, look, we've had a little bit of inquiry, but, we haven't got anything signed up or anything like that. That would be actually, like, if I was going to be very open and honest, that would be my dream. I'd love to see some of those books turned in. I think the visuals are there, the Flinders Ranges, all that sort of stuff. But hope, cross fingers and just keep hoping, I guess.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining us. Been great chatting to you. We've had some great questions from people as well, so thanks everyone for the questions. Before we go, do you want to tell people how they can keep in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Love talking to people online. So on Facebook, just under Fleur McDonald Author. And then Instagram, I've got two accounts. So the first one is Fleur McDonald. I think it's just Fleur McDonald. If it's not, it's Fleur McDonald Author. And then I've got one for my farming side of things and my travel, and that's the roaming writer. So you'll see where I go to try and research new books and not hammer people with my farming life. you know, on my author page, and Twitter, Fleur McDonald Author, and my website is fleurmcdonald.com, and there's a contact page through there. So if you've got any questions that I haven't answered tonight, flick me an email, happily answer them.
Well, thanks so much, and it's been great talking to you, and hope to have another chance to talk to you and read more of your books.
That'd be fantastic. Thanks for having me, Jackie.
Thanks.
See you later, everyone.
Bye,
I hope you have
everybody.
a good night's sleep because it'll be late where you guys are.
Thanks. Bye.
See ya.